The Smashing Machine has been released. I got to see it in movie theaters. I want to tell you about what I thought, I guess now. So welcome to Sam Roberts Now. The Smashing Machine is the story of Mark Kerr, who is one of the, I guess, forefathers, you could say, of popular mixed martial arts and UFC in America, which is ironic because so much of his career and almost all of the fights in this movie take place in Japan. But that's because in those days, the UFC couldn't get done in America. Just as the UFC was gaining any traction whatsoever, it started to get banned. The sport was banned. State after state after state would ban the sport. So to make money, so many of these fighters would have to go to Japan and fight for organizations like Pride. Now, that's not really explored in the Smashing Machine. That's not really explored in the movie. Because to me, this movie is not about fighting. I don't even think this movie is about what Mark Kerr did. To me, I think the movie is about who Mark Kerr was and is. It's a story of a human being that happens to center around this world of fighting. And I think that all of the flaws that exist within Mark, that you can trace back to that need to be in the cage or in the ring and win these fights, and the fact that so much of his life suffers because he is so wrapped up in winning fights. I think that that's something that any of us could apply to anything that we have that level of passion for, where we will put our entire life on the side just to watch this happen. And sometimes that's the cost of greatness. This movie stars, obviously, Dwayne The Rock Johnson as Mark Kerr. It's written and directed by Benny Safdie. Ryan Bader's in it playing Mark Coleman, who he does a tremendous job, by the way, as Mark Coleman. Boss Rutan's in it. Emily Blunt is in it, who is a supporting actress, co-starring alongside Dwayne The Rock Johnson as Mark Kerr's girlfriend in this. But, you know, I do walk in with a bias because I love Dwayne The Rock Johnson and I love Benny Safdie. But to say that you have a bias based on the fact that these two people are great at what they do, it's not exactly a bias in my mind. So for me, I feel like watching this, first of all, the story is told, and I will try to do it without any spoilers, but it is based on a documentary called The Smashing Machine. And I would recommend anybody that hasn't seen it, especially if you've seen the film The Smashing Machine, go watch the documentary, because more so than most dramatic movies based on documentaries, this one stays extremely true to the documentary. It's produced by $7, which is The Rock's company. So this was a passion project that The Rock had. And he found Benny Safdie as that writer-director who obviously had a passion for it as well, because you don't write and direct a film like this unless you're passionate about it. And if you need more evidence of that, Benny Safdie has been walking around New York City and Los Angeles with a big placard over his entire body advertising the film. I got to see it at a screening that Benny was at, and it was so obvious, his enthusiasm for this movie. I mean, it was radiating off of him, and I think that's refreshing to see from a director, especially somebody like Benny Safdie that's done so much already. So to get to the movie itself, I think that this you can find the 3-act structure in this movie, but it's not as cut and dry as most films are. And I think that is that kind of Benny Safdie charm to this thing. That's what Benny Safdie historically has done. You know, you walk into this and you're not handheld. You're really not handheld at any point throughout the movie. You know, in a lot of like combat sports movies, they have scenes that are specifically written in so that you can understand rules, jargon, vernacular, backstory, whatever it is, so that it can kind of cast a wider net. And there are a couple of scenes here and there where they are trying to set up backstory for what is going on around this story. But they're few and far between, and they come across to me as very organic. Like there's a scene where Mark Kerr is in a doctor's waiting room, and he's talking to an old lady or a woman or whatever. And at that point, he's explaining that UFC is, she's saying, isn't UFC that thing that's banned? So you do have that information presented in the film. But to me, it didn't feel like I was getting hit with a sledgehammer the way I sometimes feel like I'm getting hit with a sledgehammer in movies like this that are trying to bring me into this world that I don't even necessarily need to be a part of. Because again, you're telling the story of a human being. Fighting happens to be what he does. But it's a story that humans, I think, should be able to relate to. So you're kind of planted right into this story from the opening scene. Benny Safdie does that a lot, but like from the time the movie begins, there's no sort of, well, Mark Kerr grew up doing this, and then this happened, and that happened, and it takes like 20, 30 minutes before you actually get into the meat of the film. The meat of the film begins in the first scene, and to me, carries out throughout the entire 2-hour runtime. It's one of those things that just rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls. And there is an up and down to it that's happening, but really there's this kind of layer of, is Mark going to be able to pull this off, that kind of runs throughout the whole movie. But the interesting thing is, and I think the part that could even be uncomfortable for a lot of people, is you're not sure what it is that as a spectator you're supposed to be rooting for him to pull off. Am I rooting for him to win the fight? Am I rooting for him to have his relationship work out? Am I rooting? I mean, I think ultimately the idea is that you're just rooting for him to be happy, to find this sense of joy that seems to be escaping him. I thought Emily Blunt was tremendous as his girlfriend. I mean, the acting is great. Dwayne Johnson, not only did he use prosthetics and a wig and stuff to completely change his appearance, but he also, as big as he was, now he's lost a ton of weight, but as big as he was, he put on another like 30 pounds after his last match at WrestleMania 40 to be Mark Kerr, because that's one of the things that made Mark Kerr stand out. He was enormous. He was just this big, strong muscle dude. He looked like a superhero. And that, it's not like he was wearing a muscle suit. He had to put on all that weight to portray this. And he even changed his physique. Like, to me, the fight scenes in the beginning of the movie, Mark Kerr, the character, has a different physique than he does at the end of the movie, which leads me to think that Dwayne Johnson had to specifically kind of cater his physique to those specific scenes, which I think is pretty remarkable. The movie takes place over the course of about 4 years, late 90s going into the early 2000s, which is mind-boggling that makes it a period piece. It is crazy to me that stuff in the early 2000s happened 25 years ago, but that's just where we're at. That's just me dealing with time in general. But the relationship, there are two relationships that I think are really important in this movie. I mean, there's, Mark Kerr's relationship with Boss Rutan, which is important, but I think that the shaping relationships to this movie, to the story, to who Mark Kerr is number one, his friendship with Mark Coleman, who, like I said, Ryan Bader plays Mark Coleman, does a tremendous job, but it's this sort of quiet, understated friendship between two dudes that can't be disrupted. It's not disrupted by state lines. It's not disrupted by relationships with other people. It's not disrupted by the fact that they may have to compete in their sport against each other. There's nothing that can break this bond. And and it goes unsaid. It's not like they need to have this talk. It's not like they need to have this come to Jesus. It's not like it's just, everybody should hope that they have a Mark Coleman in their life where you don't have to. And then it makes you question, the true sort of meaning behind soulmate. Who is your soulmate ultimately? Because to me, to have somebody like Mark Coleman in your corner in life all the time it's a mark of success. Because on the other side, you have Mark Kerr's relationship with his girlfriend, who Emily Blunt does an amazing job of portraying. Because she is clearly a toxic person and a toxic force at this point, in many points in Mark Kerr's life. But at the same time, because of the way Emily Blunt plays her, you can understand what she's not right, but you get that maybe she's not living in the same reality everybody else is. And anybody that's dealt with being in a relationship, maybe with somebody that you're not supposed to be in a relationship with, but you want a relationship so bad. You just want it to work so bad because societally it's supposed to work. There's just something about that. The normalization of a relationship is something that you want in your life. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to. And I think that's what comes across in the scenes with The Rock and with Emily Blunt, that you have this thing where you're rooting for Mark Kerr to get out of this relationship because it's hurting his professional life, because his personal life is suffering from it, because of the demons that he's had to go through. She's not helping with those. But at the same time, Mark Kerr, I think, doesn't want to just be a fighter. He doesn't want to just be defined by fighting. He wants to be in this relationship. He wants this perfection around him. He wants order around him. He wants his cactus to be pruned correctly. He wants all this to be right, but he doesn't know how to make it happen, and he's unwilling to put the work in. You know, for somebody in this movie, I feel like Mark Kerr, if you really analyze his behavior in this movie, he clearly desperately wants a healthy relationship, but it's not a plant he's willing to water. He won't do the work to get it done. And I kind of found myself getting lost in that as much as I was getting lost in the fights. And there is a kind of jarring reality to all of it, where you're waiting for a sensationalized bow to be put on a package and it doesn't necessarily happen. Like you don't get that sort of clean ending. This is what the crescendo, if you will. I mean, you get an ending. And you get, you know, an ending that one would get in real life. And I think that there's something really interesting about seeing that portrayed on the big screen. So, I mean, from the time it began, the way it's shot, you know, there's a lot going on. Like they use both film and VHS to kind of put you back there. It really looks like that sort of, you can feel the VHS tape quality to it. You can hear it, the warmth or whatever. But I think that it does feel so grounded in reality that it almost brings you back to the movie The Wrestler. It's less movie-like than The Wrestler is. But I mean, if you watch Beyond the Mat, the wrestling documentary, there's points in it that you're like, oh, this is just like that. And honestly, like, it makes sense because it is so closely based on that Smashing Machine documentary. Coming out of this, you know, it had great reactions at film festivals, standing ovations, Toronto Film Festival, Venice Film Festival, good reviews. I do definitely think that this is a movie that guides you to revisiting the question of who the best wrestler turned actor is. Because I think that there had been a general consensus that, box office aside, Batista might be the best wrestler turned actor. And then people started seeing some of the stuff that John Cena was doing from a comedic perspective in Homelander, and I'm not in Homelander, and Peacemaker. And just the fact that it was so different, both Batista and John Cena are so different from who they were before in wrestling, that you start to go like, okay, maybe this is the best actor, maybe that's the best actor. And for a long time, The Rock was Mr. Box Office, just doing these mega action movies that are going to make $1 billion and are going to sell, you know, 200,000 tons of popcorn and are going to own the summer. And this is really the first time, and this is a transition in The Rock's acting career. When The Rock left wrestling to pursue acting, at first he did slim down, and he was still playing like tough guys, but you look at movies like Walking Tall and things like that, and they weren't action movies per se. There was action in them, but you were starting to see him, you know, start to figure out and flex his acting chops. And he did the kids' movies too, like The Tooth Fairy and everything. And I think that's where he started to become this kind of star, this attraction, if you will. And then when he got big for the movie Pain and Gain. And after that, there was no coming back. And he realized, like, oh, people want to see The Rock. Let me give him The Rock. Let me give him The Rock saving everybody from an earthquake. Let me give him The Rock saving everybody from a skyscraper. Let me give him The Rock saving everybody from Jumanji. Let me do it all, right? And it was super successful, and we all had fun. I love all those action movies. But it does make you go like, okay, that's what The Rock does. And I think as an actor, The Rock wants to go, hold on a second. Now that everybody's having conversations about the best wrestler turned actor, I have these other things that I'm capable of. You know, and we see him here in Smashing Machine, and I think it does open the door for, let's talk about who the best wrestler turned actor is. He's going to be in a Martin Scorsese movie coming up. He's doing another movie with Benny Safdie coming up. He's got all a lot. I mean, this is now the third page turn, in my opinion, for The Rock's acting career. He's great. He disappears in this film. And I had the opportunity to talk to Mark Kerr right after I saw the movie. And it was even more jarring after talking to Mark Kerr, how close, how much I was like, yeah, this is the guy I just saw on the screen. The Oscar buzz is what everybody's talking about, right? Is this going to be The Rock's Oscar movie? And I don't know. It could be. I mean, you know, well, it's going to be a busy Oscar season. We got Ari Aster, Benny Safdie, and Paul Thomas Anderson putting out movies this year. We are blessed beyond blessed. Oh, and Ryan Coogler. Don't forget about Sinners, too. I mean, so this has been a low-key, incredible year for film. And so I think this concentration of, is this going to be the Rock's Oscar, is far too limiting to the conversation. Could it be? It absolutely could be. Of all the movies he's done, if he should be nominated, he absolutely should be nominated. And he could win. And if he did win, it wouldn't be one of these shocking things. It would be like, yeah, he kicked ass. He, like, acting-wise, he kicked ass in this thing. And it's not just about the physical transformation, because a lot of people, that's the thing. Go to this movie to see The Rock's physical transformation. No. Go to this movie to watch The Rock showcase what he can do as an actor. Because whether this turns into an Oscar for The Rock or not, I think it puts him on that road where he can start expanding on what he does as an actor and start to be in that conversation of people who could get Oscars. And I love that for him, for somebody who's committed this much. Like, you know, what he did for professional wrestling, he put his entire life into it. He became one of the greatest of all time. The fact that he can now do that, and he did that with being an action star. He's one of the greatest action stars of all time. So now let's see what he can do as an actor. And for this to be that first step in the door, I think it's brilliant. I love, because I would have never put Benny Safdie and The Rock together. I love both of their work completely separately. And the fact that when there is just that something happens when those two come together, I think is magical. I think it's really, really cool. I can't wait to see how the conversation about this movie expands. I'm happy for Mark Kerr and the fact that this guy who really does have this incredible story, one of the great American wrestlers of the 90s, wrestled Kurt Angle, goes on to MMA, is one of the first giant stars in MMA, just as MMA is starting, and is out of the sport before the money is there, before people are becoming household names, now gets to become this household name and gets to be the person whose story it was that The Rock was able to tell, and that Benny Safdie was able to tell, and that Emily Blunt was able to tell in this sort of culturally important movie that has everybody talking right now, I think is really, really cool. If you saw the movie, let me know what you think. You can leave it in the comments below. If you enjoy these Sam Roberts Now videos, let me know. Leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one when it's once again now.